Number 10. Dark Claw. One of the coolest looking hero matchups to come out of the Amalgam universe in my opinion. The hero known as Dark Claw is a combination of Batman and Wolverine named Logan Wayne. Like our familiar Batman, Wayne witnessed his parents' murder at a young age and then was sent off to live with his uncle in Alberta. However, that did not last very long because his uncle was murdered as well, and Wayne was sent to live in a home run by nuns. Once old enough, he enlisted in the Royal Canadian Air Force alongside a man named Creed H. Quinn, and the two of them were submitted to the Weapon X program, aka the Canadian Super Soldier program. It was there that the Wolverine half of this character came to be, as it was here he learned of his metamutant powers and had his bones fused with adamantium. Quinn, however, was not so lucky because through the course of the experiments he grew more and more insane and would eventually become the Hyena, a combination of Sabretooth and the Joker and Dark Claw's greatest enemy. Equipped with the powers of Wolverine and the vast knowledge of Batman, Dark Claw is a truly awesome character, so check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1996's Marvel vs. DC number 3. Number 9. Thomas Wayne. Turns out crime fighting is a genetic thing when it comes to the Wayne family. In the Flashpoint timeline, Bruce is actually the one who's murdered by the robber Joe Chill instead of his parents Thomas and Martha. Now as a result, for reasons similar to his son, Thomas Wayne took up a personal vendetta against crime that led him to taking up the mantle of Batman. But unlike his son, he is much more ruthless in his actions, as he is happy to kill any criminal that gets in his way. Equipped with the same genius intellect and hand-to-hand combat skills you would expect from any Batman, this version of the Caped Crusader has also been seen with multiple firearms, and also an Amazonian sword. Thomas secretly funds his war on crime through his business, Wayne Casinos, and thanks to this he's able to fight some of the most notorious villains Gotham's ever seen. One being his own wife, Martha Wayne, the Joker of this timeline. So if you're not familiar with the Flashpoint timeline, I highly recommend you take a look at some of the storylines it follows. So check out this grittier version of Batman for yourself in his first appearance in Flashpoint Volume 2, Number 1, so you can fully understand why he considers himself to be a man with too much blood on his hands to be considered good. Number 8. Grim Knight. This version of Batman is from the Dark Multiverse and serves under the Batman Who Laughs as basically a gun for hire, acting as his second in command. In his timeline, Bruce's origin story is pretty much the same as his Prime Earth counterpart, however, he kills Joe Chill right after the murder of his parents when Chill drops his gun and gives him the opening. For the next several years, Bruce traveled the world honing his skills as an assassin and eventually returns to Gotham City to strike fear into the criminals' hearts as this universe's Batman. He has done some truly terrible things, such as making Jim Gordon watch as he made two highly explosive blimps crash into both Arkham Asylum and Blackgate Penitentiary, or when he tortured Mayor Harvey Dent with radiation until he was allowed to put up surveillance cameras all over Gotham. Sure, all that made Gotham a much safer place, but there was definitely a better method to it. With a full arsenal of weapons hid around the city of Gotham and on his person, the Grim Knight is truly merciless and not someone you want to mess with. First appearing in 2019's The Batman Who Laughs Volume 2, Number 1, Grim Knight truly shows how dark a Batman who kills can be. Number 7. Damian Wayne. Now let's jump to a possible future here for a second and take a look at a version of Damian Wayne who took up the mantle of Batman in Bethlehem. In this possible future, Bruce Wayne retired as Batman and Dick Grayson took up the mantle. However, he was killed by some explosive Jokerfish and Damian stepped up to the plate as Batman. Unlike his father and Dick Grayson, Damian's Batman in this future is more willing to injure and kill opponents if he judges it necessary to do so, and this is pretty easy for him to do because he has always been pretty violent and definitely has the know-how to take down anyone and anything. Now, it's heavily implied that in this possible future, Damian made a literal deal with the devil, exchanging his soul for immortality and the healing abilities he felt he needed to protect Gotham. And he felt this had to be done because he couldn't measure up to his predecessors, being his father and Dick Grayson. Using the city of Gotham as a weapon itself by setting traps throughout it, we've seen this Batman go up against the likes of Two-Face in order to save a young Terry McGinnis, who he eventually takes under his Batwing, training him to become the next Batman. Why not check out this possible future for yourself in 2007's Batman number 666. Number 6. Batman 1 Million. In the far-off 853rd century, criminals and crime fighters are still very prevalent, and the most dangerous criminals are actually imprisoned on the planet Pluto and overseen by this new Batman. Their secret identity is not known, but we do know that he was one of the children that Zaron forced to watch their parents murder, and from that day on, he swore to never let such a tragedy happen again. They chose the symbol of the bat because he thought it stood for something more than just fear, stating it stood for justice and as an ideal. He studied for years on end, honing his fighting skills and knowledge in as many physical and mental techniques as possible, and all of that eventually paid off because he was eventually offered a position on the new incarnation of the Justice League alongside Superman and Flash 1 Million. After years of working together, they all went back in time to invite the Justice League of the 20th century to see the rebirth of the first Superman, Superman Prime. Much to their surprise, their companion Starman betrayed them and unleashed a plague onto Earth, and with the real Justice League being unable to stop them, Justice Legion Alpha stepped in to help them. Batman 1 Million worked with the 20th century Batman to find a way to stop Starman's plan, along with Dick Grayson and Tim Drake, using the technology of the Batcave, and together, they were able to stop his plan. ending with Starman returning to the light once more to stop what he had done. Give this storyline a read for yourself, starting with 1998's JLA number 23. Number 5. Owlman. Thomas Wayne Jr. from the Antimatter universe is the son of Thomas and Martha and older brother to Bruce. After his family's murder, he decided to take up the mantle of Owlman. However, unlike Batman, Thomas wanted to conquer the villains he went up with rather than just fight them. Thanks to his father's wealth that he was left as inheritance, Thomas underwent years of training and general enhancement so he could enact his plans of conquering Gotham's crime world. Alongside the other members of the Crime Syndicate, a group who is basically the evil version of the Justice League, they managed to establish and maintain control over a large portion of their Earth, even though they were up against other powerful organizations such as the Young Offenders and the Crime Lodge. Eventually, the Crime Syndicate began kidnapping people from the 52 multiverse matter-based worlds and were visited by our Justice League to retrieve the people from the Justice League Earth. Thomas, along with Superwoman and Ultraman, were banished to a prison subdimension while Johnny Quick and the current Power Ring were captured. Highly recommend you check out the storyline for yourself, so check out Owlman in his first appearance in 2000's JLA Earth 2. Number 4. Azrael. Jean-Paul Valley, the genetically augmented assassin slash vigilante for the group known as the Order of St. Dumas. Now, I said genetically augmented because Valley was a test tube baby and his genetic structure was altered by scientists with an animal DNA which allows him to do the insane feats a normal human could only dream of. Originally an ally and even apprentice of Batman, Azrael was the one to adopt the Batman moniker following the Dark Knight's crippling defeat at the hands of Bane. However, he went insane for a short while during his run as the Caped Crusader and decided to augment the Batsuit so it was capable of causing some serious damage. It was very apparent early on that Azrael's Batman was of a very different breed because he was much more ruthless, okay with killing, and pretty much just wanted to punish the criminals rather than save any lives. Although he was doing a great job of cleaning Gotham City of its criminals, Bruce felt his methods were much too violent and irresponsible and personally removed him from the mantle after his full recovery, causing Valley to return to his identity as Azrael. Valley was presumably killed in a battle against his two greatest foes, Beast and Scratch, as he was shot through his armor by a multitude of Teflon bullets, and only his costume was recovered. 5 years later, another Azrael was created by the Order in ex-police officer Michael Lane. Check out Jean-Paul Valley as both Azrael and Batman, starting with 1992's Batman Sword of Azrael, number 1. Number 3. Murder Machine. With an identical upbringing as the Batman we all know and love, Earth-44's Bruce Wayne ended up with one more tragic death in his life, the murder of his butler, Alfred. Blaming himself for Alfred's death, Bruce enlisted the help of Cyborg to create the Alfred Protocol, a powerful AI and hologram with the intent of keeping Bruce safe at all times. Within one day, the Alfred Protocol had executed all of the criminals in Arkham Asylum as he deemed them a threat to Bruce. Eventually, Bruce started to doubt his ability to keep himself safe and relied very heavily on the AI Albert, having him remove his ability to feel fear and sadness and replace his body with a mechanical one that would never ever fail him. This was the birth of the Murder Machine and thus began the Earth's demise. Like the other members of the Dark Knights, Murder Machine represents one of Batman's many fears and aspects of his life. This one in particular represents his fear of not being as self-sufficient as he thinks, his father-son relationship with Alfred, and the regret of cutting off other people. Check them out in their first appearance in 2017's Dark Days, the casting, number 1. Number 2. The Batman Who Laughs. Obviously, this twisted Batman had to make an appearance on this list today. However, he is not at number 1 because there are definitely some darker Batman out there. Hailing from the dark multiverse, we have Earth-22's Bruce Wayne, also known as the Batman Who Laughs. After an all-out assault from Joker against Gotham, Bruce completely loses it and snaps the Joker's neck, which causes a mysterious gas to leak from the Joker's mouth into Bruce's body. This led to the mad descent of Bruce's sanity and his transformation into the Joker-Batman hybrid known as the Batman Who Laughs. With the abilities of the Joker and Batman combined, alongside the Jokerized Robins known as Groblins or Dark Robins, the Batman Who Laughs assembled the darkest and most twisted versions of Batman across the dark multiverse and created the Dark Knights in order to wreak havoc on the world. In the events of Dark Knight Death Metal, he is seemingly killed by Wonder Woman's new Chainsaw of Truth, but I highly doubt this is the last we will ever see of him. So check him out for yourself in his first appearance in Dark Days, the casting, number 1. And finally, at number 1, we have Batman Earth 43. Now, not a whole lot is known about this Batman's life prior to his introduction, but it can be assumed that it was similar to the Batman origin we're all familiar with. You know, parents' death leads to training, leads to becoming Batman and fighting the likes of the Joker, the Riddler, you know, etc. After discovering that the most famous vampire, Dracula, is still alive and operating in Gotham City, Bruce realizes that his recent dreams were the result of him being visited by Tanya, another vampire who was once under Dracula's control. Tanya had actually been biting Bruce but hadn't been taking any of his blood. She was instead infusing him with vampiric powers without destroying his humanity. Thanks to these new powers, Batman now possessed some incredibly enhanced senses, super strength, and more alongside his immense knowledge of hand-to-hand combat. With enough power to now kill Dracula, Batman confronts and kills him by impaling the vampire on a tree. However, this win came at a serious cost because Dracula was able to completely drain Batman of all his blood, effectively completing his transformation into a vampire. Fast forward a little bit and we see our vampiric Batman put into a coma thanks to a stake to the heart after his bloodlust and rage causes him to drain the Joker of all his blood. Alfred eventually awoke his master later on because Gotham City was overrun with criminals. However, this was a pretty bad idea because all he did was hunt down his enemies, both new and old, so he could just drain them of all their blood and kill them. He is eventually killed after he walks into the sunlight, hoping he can finally pay for what he did and have some peace, but he is revived once more later on in the search for Ray Palmer, Red Rain. Number 10, the Aquaman. First on our list today is Arthur Curry of the Wildstorm universe. Now I know you're probably thinking, how different could this Aquaman really be if he has the same name and still goes by Aquaman? Well, let me tell you, when I found out about him, I was truly shocked. Arthur, like his main counterpart, still has all his undersea abilities, but instead he gained them by genetically splicing his DNA with that of sea life so that he could, get this, terrorize and demand human sacrifices from a local fishing village. Now these genetic mutations gave him not only the ability to survive underwater and traverse the aquatic terrain with ease, but it also gave him superhuman strength, a ridiculously scary physique, and claws just for that little extra intimidation factor. Now why would he do this, you ask? Well, like I said, one of the reasons was so he could terrorize innocent villagers, but apparently the main reason is that he was so obsessed with his family's supposed heritage, believing himself to be the true king of the sea. What a nut job. Check out his story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2018's Wildstorm, Michael Cray, number 4. Number 9, Aqua Beast. Born to a fairly wealthy family, Peter Dudley was a spoiled playboy who one day had a chance encounter with Aquaman and Mera while he was out yachting, and, you know, as one does. He immediately fell in love with Mera, who was not interested in him for, you know, obvious reasons, so Dudley set out to beat Aquaman at his own game so he could win Mera's love. He hired a scientist named Dr. Hans Ludorf and told him to recreate Aquaman's powers, only stronger. Dr. Hans tried to comply, but something in the process went wrong and Dudley became a hulking monstrosity with at least twice Aquaman's superhuman strength and the ability to breathe underwater. Now dubbing himself Aqua Beast, Peter Dudley attacked Aquaman and kidnapped Mera. Whether or not Aquaman could have defeated Dudley in his Aqua Beast form remains a mystery, however, because Dudley and Mera were then attacked by Hamuri, an extraterrestrial from an unspecified aquatic planet who had come to Earth plotting a global conquest. Hamuri and Dudley fought, and in the course of the battle both fell into a tidal whirlpool from which neither one was able to escape from. Check out Dudley in 1967's Aquaman, number 34. Number 8, Orm Marius. The half-brother of Aquaman and also his greatest enemy, Orm Marius, aka the Ocean Master, appeared pretty early on in Orm's career as Aquaman. Over anything else, Ocean Master desires the throne of Atlantis, and he's done some pretty maniacal things to try and get it. Adopting the identity of human businessman Orm Marius, Ocean Master built a private fleet and attempted to plunder New Marine City, a construction project on the Gotham City waterfront using his half-brother Aquaman, who he had hypnotized as, you know, some muscle. Aquaman was freed from Orm's influence by Batman and driven from Gotham. Aquaman prevented Commissioner Gordon from killing Orm because he desired to bring his brother back to justice himself. Wondering why I'm considering Orm to be a dark alternate version of Aquaman? Well, it's because in one of the last settings of this villain, he has used his mystical talents to alter reality so that he was Aquaman, and Orm was Ocean Master. As Aquaman, Orm held Sub Diego under his evil rule, however the heroic Ocean Master was able to defeat him, of course. Check out Ocean Master's story for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1966's Aquaman, number 29. Number 7, Thanatos. Meant to be a dark reflection of Aquaman, Thanatos comes to us from an other dimensional realm known as Nether Space that is kind of reverse purgatory, where beings known as the Others keep entities until they are filled with sufficient evil to be returned to the New Earth dimension, only coming out of this dimension to lure victims into his world so that he could steal their identities. One day he decided it was time to go for the big guns, and he lured Aquaman to his mirror by sending him a message from Aqualad, asking to meet in the abandoned house the mirror resided in. Satisfied with the powerful identity, Thanatos kept Aquaman's form, but was eventually banished back to the Nether Space for, you know, obvious reasons. We see Thanatos return once more. This time it was when Aquaman found his way to the Nether Space as he was in search of Mera. Aquaman and Thanatos engaged in a final battle in which Aquaman is the victor, of course, but he refuses to kill Thanatos, and the others see this as a weakness and a lack of evil. They deem Aquaman unready to leave, but during the battle, Thanatos proved himself to be filled with sufficient evil, and they allowed him to return to the New Earth universe where he could continue to live as Aquaman. Check out the rest of his story for yourself, starting with 1970's Aquaman, number 54. Number 6. King Proximus. One of many corrupt Atlanteans, Proximus was one of the worst, conspiring to straight up eliminate Aquaman for being the chosen hero. Proximus summoned Aquaman back to Poseidonus under the pretext of investigating a series of bizarre explosions taking place outside the city. When the two went to investigate, Proximus pushed Aquaman into the path of the spiraling vortex, sending him backwards through time like 2,500 years. Returning to Atlantis, Proximus assumed Aquaman's appearance and told everyone that the real Proximus had died in the explosions. With Aquaman's reputation, he was able to do pretty much anything and everything. However, he was eventually taken down by Aquaman after he returned to the present alongside Aqualad. A short time later, Proximus conspired with a pirate named Captain Clay, and together they lured a pack of sea monsters to attack Atlantis. While Aquaman and Aqualad were distracted trying to keep the creatures away from the populated areas, Proximus took advantage of the situation and staged a coup against the Atlantean king Stamar. His first official act as the newly crowned king was to imprison Aquaman and Aqualad. However, this didn't really last too long because our heroes were able to dethrone him and take him down. Check out his 4-issue run for yourself, starting with the 1962's Aquaman, number 3. Number 5. Aquadus. Hailing from Earth 9, Dr. Aquadus was once a scientist of the Svitavi Collective, which was the company that was the lead designer of the Red Tornado warhead. After the completion of the Red Tornado, he decided it was time to work on another experiment, which was learning to teleport living tissue. This turned out to be, not the best idea though, because the experiment led to an accident that bonded Aquadus to a nearby lake that transformed his entire body into water. This had its perks though, because now he had the ability to control and manipulate pretty much every body of water, so I guess it wasn't all bad. Dubbing himself Aquaman from that point on, he shifted his eyes onto world domination, doing so by crafting a supergun that would destroy Earth's moon and allow him to completely harness the raw power of all the water on Earth. His plot was soon discovered by 6 heroes: the Atom, Flash, Joker, Manhunter, Plastic Man, and Spectre, and the heroes put a stop to Aquadus's plan, in which he was obliterated from the exploding backlash caused by his destroyed supergun. Check out his story in 1997's Tangent Comics Secret 6, number 1. Number 4. Underwater Man. On Earth 10, the history of not only the planet, but many of our superpowered friends is a bit different from what you might expect. On this Earth, Superman, known as Overman, crash landed as a baby in Germany instead of Kansas, and the Germans used him to win World War II and basically take over the whole world. And, along with an evil Superman, obviously comes an evil version of the Justice League known as the New Reichman. On this evil team is an Atlantean known as Underwater Man, and he is basically Aquaman in every way, shape, and form, because the two share all of their powers. However, the biggest difference is that, this version is, well, evil. Underwater Man is a firm believer in the World War II era Germanic thinking, and he truly thought that Atlantis was the birthplace and root of the Aryan race, so that's why he aligned himself with the New Reichman. Eventually though, and thankfully, Overman realized that what they were doing was wrong, and he leaked some precious information to the freedom fighters that resulted in the demise of not only the New Reichman, but Metropolis as well. Check out Underwater Man in his first appearance in 2015's The Multiversity Master Men, number 1. Number 3. The Drowned. Coming to us from Earth -11, one of the many Earths from the Dark Multiverse, is Bryce Wayne. Bryce became the Batwoman of her universe after her father Martin Wayne was murdered in an alley, so pretty standard Batman stuff. Later she became romantically involved with Sylvester Kyle, who was also murdered, and this set Bryce on a mission to kill every last metahuman around, and then after 18 months she succeeded after killing Aquawoman with her own trident. Now in retaliation, the Atlanteans submerged all of Gotham and some part of the world in water, but Bryce, after many augmentations to her body and with Aquawoman's trident, was able to conquer the Atlanteans and submerge the rest of her world in water. Now, like all of the Dark Knights under the Batman Who Laughs, the Drowned represents one of Batman's fears. This one being the fear of going too far in the fight against superhumans, his love for Catwoman, and his inability to trust anyone but himself. Check her story out for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2017's Dark Days, The Casting, number 1. Number 2. Sea King. From Earth 3, an alternate reality that was supposedly said to be the birthplace of true evil. Now on this Earth, nobody cares about right or wrong, they only care about strength and having power. So the weak are annihilated and only the strong live on. This is where Sea King comes in, the evil version of Aquaman who is a member of the Crime Syndicate, aka the Evil Justice League. Sea King, along with the rest of the Crime Syndicate, escaped the destruction of their native Earth by using a portal created by the Outsider to travel to our prime Earth. Unfortunately, Sea King did not survive the journey and immediately died the moment he exited the portal. The Syndicate dumped their fallen comrade in the middle of the ocean. However, after sinking to the bottom, Sea King suddenly awoke for, some unknown reason. During the Crime Syndicate's initial attack, Deadman entered the lifeless Sea King's body for protection, and by entering, he no longer knew who he was and began attacking his team when they came looking for him. John Constantine was able to break Sea King's hold on Deadman, though he locked him in the body, seeing it as useful in their plans to defeat the Crime Syndicate. Check out Sea King for yourself, starting with 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23. Number 1. Emperor Aquaman. Now, just checking, have I mentioned how much I love the Flashpoint timeline? No? Not enough, you say? Well, perfect, because next on our list is Orin of the Flashpoint timeline, otherwise known as Emperor Aquaman. Now, if you're not familiar with one of the sickest timelines in DC, basically what happened is Barry Allen went back in time to prevent the death of his mother. But doing this had some pretty severe consequences as it rewrote all history and created a new timeline. In this timeline, Orin was brought back to Atlantis when he was a teenager due to the death of his grandfather. As a result, the young Arthur never learned compassion and kindness from his father, who was killed by the Atlantean agents sent to recover him. Fast forward to the present day and we see Atlantis in an all-out war against the Amazons because Wonder Woman killed Mira, his wife, in retaliation to having her mother killed. Aquaman caused Western Europe to sink into the sea, killing over 60 million people, intending to also sink England and the rest of the world as well. His full plan never gets realized though because a final battle is waged between Emperor Aquaman and Wonder Woman. However, they're both approached by the Flash and the rest of the heroes who are there to stop the war for good. Check out his full story starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, Number 1. That'll be it for this video, everyone. If I happen to miss one or more of your favorite dark alternate versions of Aquaman, let it be known in the comments below, and honestly, who knows, maybe you'll see them pop up on a continuation of this list.
And at 10, Trigger Twins. The moniker of the Trigger Twins was originally used by Walt and Wayne Trigger, two cowboy heroes from the Old West. Tad and Tom Trigger also called themselves the Trigger Twins while working as criminals in Gotham City. However, Oliver Queen was enlisted as a Trigger Twin in the second part of the Elseworlds crossover event on the CW. In the Arrowverse, the Trigger Twins are a notorious criminal duo created in the second alternate reality created by Dr. John Deegan using the Book of Destiny, given to him by the Monitor. While technically not really the Green Arrow, Diaz as a cop calls Oliver by his actual name, thus making it good enough for me. The Trigger Twins were the most feared criminals in Central City. They became the CCPD's #1 priority after a bank robbery spree. So, they were criminals before I guess they were awoken, when, you know, they swapped into that reality. This change happened at the end of Arrow's part of the crossover, Part 2, and Supergirl's Part 3. And at 9, Dark Archer. Malcolm Merlyn is a bow-wielding assassin who serves as the archenemy to the Green Arrow, but has also gone up against the likes of the Black Canary, obviously, and Batman. The character also made his live-action debut in 2012 with the first season of Arrow. Before becoming the Green Arrow, Oliver Queen was inspired to take up archery by the exploits of Oliver King, aka Malcolm the Magician, who was a master archer with acute accuracy. Merlyn later challenged the Green Arrow to a public duel and wrecked him. After that, Merlyn vanished and became a member of the League of Assassins, a plot point that would later be worked into the show. The Green Arrow came face to face with the Dark Archer again when he tried to assassinate Batman. GA managed to intercept Merlyn's arrow, hitting it with one of his own. Merlyn admitted that GA had improved, but then he escaped before getting caught. While not being a version of Oliver Queen, Merlyn is sure meant to be a dark reflection of the witty and humorous Green Arrow that we know from the comics, and that's enough to land him a spot on this list. And at 8, Flashpoint. The Flashpoint version of Green Arrow isn't really a bad guy per se, but he is definitely a dark alternate version. In the Flashpoint timeline, Oliver Queen is the head of Green Arrow Industries, a military contracting company a la Tony Stark. He has a team known as the Green Arrows who are all ex-military who serve as his backup when acquiring new equipment. Oliver Queen is an inventive genius, but he likes to steal advanced gadgets from villains and then refurbish them to sell to the military. He also tests them in the city, making the city a target for the villains who want their gear back, which is kinda evil if you think about it. He turns to fighting crime after finding a female raider who killed his Green Arrows. The raider was the daughter of Vixen, so Ollie called a backup team. However, they ended up killing his daughter, which turned him towards fighting crime instead of profiting from it. And at 7, JLA, The Nail. Oliver Queen is in a rough spot when it comes to Justice League of America, The Nail. In this universe, Oliver Queen was his own downfall during a fight with the android Amazo, where he ended up becoming indirectly responsible for the death of Hawkman. This incident lost him both his legs and his right arm, and also he lost his left eye due to the injuries sustained by Amazo. This also caused Oliver to resign from the Justice League and start blaming them for his injuries. A while after this, Oliver was really bitter and harbored so much resentment towards the League that he began making claims that the League and all metahumans are secretly aliens conspiring against humanity. He sounds like my dad. This was so uncharacteristic of the hero we all love, but it was his trauma and I'm pretty sure some form of PTSD manifesting in that way, as a way to cope with the loss of his limbs and abilities, which had helped define him up until that point. And at 6, it's Cupid, stupid. Carrie Cutter had appeared in both the comics and the show in the form of her alias Cupid. Carrie was a special ops soldier who worked for a program called Cobalt. During a mission in Georgia, she saw something that really messed her up, so in an effort to face that, she volunteered for a program that would make her fearless. It also turned her emotions up to 11 when it comes to love, making her fall in love really quickly, passionately, and aggressively, never for the better, even if you're into that kind of thing. In the TV show, she was first introduced in Arrow Season 3, Episode 7, where she uses love and pleasure as a way to manipulate people in order to find the one she has, air quotes, fallen for. For the show, she had fallen for Oliver after he saved her from getting killed during Slade Wilson's siege, the season prior, hence her archery. you know? Her psychiatrist diagnoses her with having attachment disorder, the inability to form meaningful relationships, as she puts it. She gets away but comes back killing newlyweds because her love got destroyed. She also makes an appearance in the show's Suicide Squad, in love with Deadshot before he dies. Halfway through number 5, Prometheus. Prometheus is another iconic Green Arrow villain meant to be a dark reflection of him, especially in his Arrow Season 5 appearance, being an even darker version of Deathstroke, who are both villains created by Oliver due to his past actions. In the comics, Prometheus deals a whole load of damage to Green Arrow, both mentally and in the sales, thanks to another comic storyline. In Cry for Justice, a slew of superhero deaths and attacks on heroes are revealed to be the work of Prometheus. In the story, he also ends up taking Roy Harper's arm and killing his daughter in the bomb that went off in Star City. Once Oliver sees this, he sets out on finding Prometheus and killing him. Oliver finds Prometheus and kills him by shooting an arrow between his eyes, and then this leads to Oliver being put on trial for the murder in what is considered one of, if not the worst GA storyline ever. In the show, Prometheus is the son of Justin Claiborne, who Oliver killed during season 1 of the show. They're so alike that Prometheus even gets confused for the Green Arrow during his first attack on a cop outside of the police station. Ballsy move, by the way. This character is a much darker version than even the Dark Archer, killing to spell out names of the original season 1 lists and more. In it for Arrowverse. The Arrowverse has been mentioned a lot on this list, not because specific characters only appear there, but because they also make an appearance there. However, the actual Green Arrow from the show is much darker than the hilarious comic we all know from the comics. As the Warp Zone said in their Arrow Season 1 to 5 recap wrap, DC needed a show way more hardcore to make Smallville look like Cupcake Wars. But they couldn't get the right to the Dark Knight, so they settled for a white bread Hawkeye. So they made this character even darker than his comic counterpart in order for him to have more of an impact on screen and to probably make it more realistic. The Arrow, as he was called in season 1, was not afraid of killing. He would kill anyone who stood in his way and wouldn't hesitate to kill those on his list, even willing to kill himself in order to defeat Malcolm Merlyn. While he did end up getting lighter, the show is still a much darker tone than the comics or even the animated versions of the Green Arrow that are currently out or that have been out. So that's fitting to be on this list. Plus, I love the Arrowverse, so I'm gonna keep talking about it. In at 3, Black Lantern. For those of you who may remember, my first video on the channel was the top 10 Black Lanterns you need to know about, and Oliver Queen wasn't on that list because, well, Swamp Thing was a Black Lantern. That dude is literally the Earth, and he was a Black Lantern. Anyway, first appearing or being resurrected, I guess, in Blackest Night number 5 from January 2010, Oliver was transformed into a Black Lantern during the events of Blackest Night, which saw him attack his former allies, including his son, wife, and sidekick Speedy. During the battle, his son Connor reveals that he never really forgave his father, and Oliver's internal monologue reveals that he hopes his family is okay and that he is disgusted by his actions. He has concerns for those who were his family before death and wishes them well, even though, you know, his body's the one attacking them. The team managed to disable him by freezing him with liquid nitrogen, which is pretty cool if you ask me. What? That joke was not chill? Maybe not. Stay cool, bird boy. In at 2, Deadeye. First appearing in Justice League Quarterly number 8 in September of 1992, Deadeye is a version of Green Arrow from the Antimatter universe. Not much is known about this character, not even his real name. He is only known by the moniker of Deadeye. He is a member of the Crime Syndicate, an evil version of the Justice League from Earth 3, which includes such characters as Johnny Quick, Owlman, Ultraman, Superwoman, The Outsider, Deathstorm, and Power Ring. It's a crazy team and I actually really love the characters. But Deadeye has been in the comics so little that there is hardly any information on him. He could be Oliver Queen, but he could just as easily not be. But with the introduction of the Antimatter universe in the Arrowverse, I would like to see this character make his appearance in that show, maybe in the next Arrow crossover event. I was hoping they would do Blackest Night, but with Supergirl coming to a close because of Melissa having a kid soon, I don't know if that's gonna happen. Finally, in at number 1, Earth X. Crisis on Earth X was the 4th Arrowverse crossover, where the wedding of Barry Allen and Iris West gets interrupted by a group of from Earth X, an alternate Earth where Germany had won World War II and taken over the world. The crossover featured evil fascist versions of Supergirl and the Green Arrow, and Earth 1's version of Reverse Flash instead of an evil Barry Allen. The evil Green Arrow was equal to Earth 1's Green Arrow, matching him blow for blow, but exploiting the weakness of our Oliver's loved ones. This later came to bite him though, since RGA was able to kill him during the final fight scene when the Earth X version watched his wife explode. Literally. He was married to Overgirl from Earth X, and she literally blew up because her heart was deteriorating, hence why they invaded Earth 1 to begin with, so they could get this Supergirl's heart. Thank God they invaded Earth 1 instead of Supergirl's Earth, right? Like, every hero was on Earth 1. If they had gone to Earth like 37 or whatever Earth she's on, they would have been screwed. I don't think Clark would have been enough to take on a full Earth of NAZIs. I don't know if that word's gonna get censored because of YouTube, so yeah. If it does, that sucks.
Number 10. Facets. An alternate of Starfire appears in the Elseworlds story Facets from the New Teen Titans Annual number 10. In this story, Starfire is being created or given powers by what appears to be beings who I guess call themselves goblins. They are making her for their master, known as Phantasm, to be a guiding light in the coming darkness. Whatever that means. Well, if you read the issue, you learn what it means later. In order to perfect Starfire, she is made to suffer through much pain as they fill her up with Starfire. Because her name is, you know what I mean. Fortunately, she does eventually escape, but unaware of her own strength, she kills people accidentally with her powers. Zap. Later on, she and the rest of the Titans of this world are reunited and forced to fight Raven's demons. And in the end, a dead Nightwing disappears into the cosmos through Phantasm's cloak. Yeah, it's both a dark and weird Elseworlds story. So you should definitely read it, in my mind. I love weird comics. Number 9. Nightstar. Nightstar is the only version we really have of Starfire who is alive in the Kingdom Come alternate universe. She is the daughter of Corey and Dick Grayson. Her mother died when she was very young, so she's basically like the alternate version of her mother's mantle, or like kind of a stand-in for Starfire in this reality. But of course she's also her own person as well, so yes, she is Corey's daughter, she's not explicitly Corey. I hear you. Nightstar does not get along with her father and ends up on the opposite side of him during the whole conflict in Kingdom Come, which divides the supers. While Nightwing fought on the side of Superman, Nightstar aka Marie Grayson fought on the side of Batman's outsiders. She managed to survive the nuclear strike, targeting the feuding superheroes, and also managed to save her father, helping to kind of mend their relationship. Still, they continued to then live in a world where many of their superpowered colleagues had perished, which is pretty dark. Number 8. Klee. Klee would be the closest we'd have to a living alternate Starfire from Earth 2. In our universe, she's the only surviving Tamaranian. She proves how deadly she can be when she arrives on Apokolips, kills a ton of parademons, and frightens the other warriors that she runs into. In the end, Darkseid decides to make her one of his Furies, and Klee realizes if she is to become a Fury, she must kill those she loves most, sacrificing them so that she can be loyal to Darkseid alone by loving only him. That's some dark stuff. But that's Darkseid for you. It's a dark person. Dark place, Apokolips. Lots of fire. Number 7. Darkfire. I mean, come on, does it get darker than that? Well, yes, actually it does. Darkfire may sound like one of the darkest alternates, but it's just mostly his name that gives him that. Darkfire is actually his own character, Corey's brother. But Corey and her brother look so alike, I'm just gonna acknowledge that he's his own character, but I still wanted to count him as an alternate. Ryander is Corey's young brother who has a pretty dark backstory in the sense that he grew up during the climax of the Citadel War on Tamaran, which took place between the people of Citadel and of Tamaran. In the end, a truce was made and Darkfire's sister, Princess Coriander, Starfire herself, was given over to the Citadel to do with as they pleased. While Darkfire at least didn't have to suffer that fate, he was sent away to train and would end up fighting against the Citadel for many years alongside the Omega Men. At least that was his original story. Number 6. Corianders. This version of Coriander comes to us from the live-action show Titans. Here Corey is played by Anna Diop and is still an alien from Tamaran, but who was sent to Earth on a mission. Once her mission was complete, she would then ascend to becoming the new ruling monarch on Tamaran. Her mission? To kill a being known as the Raven, which, you guessed it, is none other than Raven herself here, known as Rachel Roth before she adopted her heroic mantle in Titans. If that's not dark enough, she also tortured men for information, and she aligned herself with a crime boss known as Konstantin Kovar, who she was using to help her complete her mission. That is, of course, until she lost her memory. Number 5. Blackfire. While not being an explicit alternate to Starfire, as she's her own character once more, which I acknowledge and respect, Blackfire is also kind of like the evil version of Starfire herself. Blackfire is Starfire's much more villainous sister. The two sisters look quite similar, although Blackfire has black hair where Starfire's hair is red. Commander went on to become queen of her home world of Tamaran. For a long time, Coriander reviled Blackfire because Commander was the one who was believed responsible for her enslavement. That's some pretty evil stuff. While Corey would would later forgive her sister and even fight alongside her, she's always been seen as the darker, more sinister sibling in comparison. Number 4. Starfire. Just based on the name, it's implied that Starfire is a combination of both Starfire and the evil, but somewhat adorable, Starro. Starfire is from the alternate universe of Earth 32 and is one of the outlaws of justice. She makes a brief appearance in Flash Forward and looks like a much darker version of her own Starfire, and looks like a much darker version of the Prime Earth Starfire based on her outfit and her villainous expression. However, we unfortunately do not get to learn much more about her. Still, we can assume that she is at the very least some kind of anti-hero on her own planet. Because the Outlaws of Justice is a hero group, but also they're kind of mixed with villains, so I'm sure they're somewhat shady over there. Number 3. Dark Multiverse Judas Contract. I love going into the dark multiverse because there's always tons of dark, twisted, alternate realities to explore. Like the alternate universe where everything is Lobo. Truly the darkest timeline. In Judas Contract, we witness what would have happened if Tara was inspired to strike out on her own and become her own violent and extremely powerful supervillain. Here she takes the mantle of Gaia and kills all of the Teen Titans and pretty much all of the Justice League too in this reality. We don't get to see much of Corey as a result. She makes a brief appearance and then is killed by Gaia, being forcibly buried in rubble after trying to fight against Gaia's earth-crushing abilities. But she's just not strong enough here. It's pretty crazy. Number 2. Flashpoint. This version of Starfire ends up joining with the alternate Wonder Woman of the Flashpoint timeline, joining her female Furies. However, in this reality, Wonder Woman is evil, and her Amazons are in a war with Atlantis and Aquaman. Starfire is one of the members of her elite team of female warriors, and is by association pretty evil herself. She even has a more villainous look to boot. Sadly, she is killed by her longtime lover from the main continuity, Dick Grayson. Sad. Number 1. Justice League Dark Apocalypse War. During the animated film Apocalypse War, Starfire ends up joining Darkseid, becoming one of his Furies. Apocalypse War takes place in a world where Darkseid has taken over Earth by using creatures called Paradooms, which are created from the combined genetics belonging to Parademons and Doomsday. So yeah, pretty crazy beings. In the end, the Teen Titans, who were Earth's last defense, end up all being either enslaved or killed. Starfire herself thereby is forced to join Darkseid and becomes one of his cyborg Furies, conquering other planets out in space.
Number 10. Red Sun Superman. Answer me this, have you ever wondered what would happen if Superman didn't have that good and wholesome upbringing and was raised somewhere else, like I don't know, let's say the Soviet Union? Well, wonder no longer, because that is exactly what happens in the comic book miniseries Superman Red Sun. Instead of his ship crash landing in Kansas, Superman lands in the Ukraine in the middle of the Cold War. In the story, Superman is raised with the ideals that the Soviet Union instills in him, and the world feels a sense of fear as a superpowered alien is the Soviets' new secret weapon. He still has all the powers you associate with Superman because he is still exposed to the yellow sun. With the passion and sense of justice we've come to expect from Superman, Soviet Superman was so dedicated to his country, which made him incredibly dangerous for the wrong reasons, because he was a living weapon that the Soviets used to spread their power throughout the globe. Over the course of about 20 years, he traveled the world with Wonder Woman, converting other nations and even becoming their new leader. He was a good leader, don't get me wrong, because he is still Superman, it was just for a very bad world. Highly recommend you check out this alternate Superman for yourself, starting with 2003's Superman Red Sun Volume 1, Number 1. Number 9. Ultraman. Similar to our Superman's origin story, this iteration was sent from the planet Krypton to Earth 3. However, it's not really stated why, since Krypton didn't explode in this universe. On his way to Earth 3, he first came into contact with kryptonite, which started the change in his body that turned him into the superpowered powerhouse that we know. And since then, every time he came in contact with kryptonite, he only grew stronger. After becoming an adult, he renamed himself Ultraman, and this is where he vastly differs from our Superman because he became a brutal authoritarian and ruthlessly rules his version of the Justice League called the Crime Syndicate, conquering most of the world with their help. After largely conquering most of the world, Ultraman developed a new type of supervision that allowed him to see into the Earth 1 dimension. Seeking an open battle to test their powers after defeating the military forces of their native Earth 3, the Crime Syndicate challenged the combined forces of the Earth 1 Justice League of America and Earth 2 Justice Society of America. Not able to withstand the combined might of two Earth's greatest super beings, the Crime Syndicate was defeated and imprisoned in an extra-dimensional bubble created by the Earth 1 Green Lantern. Ultraman is a perfect example of someone who has all the power but isn't happy. Hailing from an Earth where evil always wins, Ultraman is always looking for something new to conquer, torment, or honestly both. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance all the way back in 1964's Justice League of America number 29. Number 8. Overman. Hailing from Earth 10, a universe where the Germans won World War II, we have Overman, the leader of the new Reichman and the Superman of this Earth. Kal-El was sent to Earth 10 as a baby in a ship away from the planet Krypton because it was dying. Pretty standard Superman origin. However, much like the Red Sun Superman, he was raised by the wrong people. Alongside the German forces, Overman conquered the world in, I want to say, less than 20 years, after which he decided to leave the Earth for a while. 3 years later, he returned with a clear head and saw all the damage he helped cause and became an advocate against all of what he once stood for, while still working alongside them for some reason. Eventually, German scientists used Kal's cells to create a clone of him known as Overgirl that Overman learned to love like family. However, she died not too long after her creation, and that hit him hard. Inconsolable and grief-stricken, Overman leaked some precious information to the freedom fighters that resulted in the demise of the new Reichman and Metropolis. Check out probably one of the saddest Superman stories I've ever heard of, starting with 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook #1. Number 7. The Eradicator. Existing on New Earth, the Eradicator was an ancient Kryptonian weapon merged with a human body to form the last son of Krypton, an extreme vigilante who surfaced after the death of Superman. The Eradicator was given to Superman while on Warworld, and it began its work again on Earth, creating the Fortress of Solitude and trying to manipulate Superman into becoming the ideal Kryptonian. When it failed, the Eradicator created a new body for itself based on Superman. The Eradicator had all of Superman's memories, even though it wasn't actually the real Superman, but was far more brutal and violent. It didn't actually have the power to absorb solar radiation, so it relied on Superman's body to transfer energy to it. Over the years, it became more compassionate and even fought alongside Superman in a few fights, the most notable being their fight against Cyborg Superman, and even sacrificed itself to save Earth, but it always remained dedicated to preserving Superman and Kryptonian life. In DC's Rebirth continuity, the Eradicator has returned and it's just as dangerous as ever, so why not take a look at the Superman clone story for yourself, starting with their first appearance in 1989's Action Comics Annual #2 all the way to 2011's Action Comics #901. Number 6. Black Zero. This is actually the third Black Zero. This was an alternate version of Superboy known as Superman 2 from a hyper-time stream in which Superman had not returned to life and his clone had been left to fully mature and develop his full Kryptonian powers, in addition to some tactile telekinesis. With this new power, he could create a field around himself that made him invulnerable, allowed him to fly, and also move heavy objects, similar to Superman's strength. Superman 2 tried to fight crime, but ended up losing a battle that cost its life, leading to a backlash against human cloning. He decided to rename himself after the pro-cloning organization on Krypton, Black Zero, and fight for clone rights. He used Project Cadmus to kill off most of the world's superheroes and recreated most of them as clones of the originals, but that wasn't enough for him. He entered Hypertime, a cross between a time stream and the multiverse during an era where DC Comics only consisted of one universe, to travel to other realities to fight for clone rights as well. Black Zero was a fanatical and ruthless warrior who was eventually and thankfully stopped by the combined strength of numerous Superboys from across Hypertime. Appearing across only a few issues, this is a short story that is definitely worth a read, so if you feel like it, check out 1999 Superboy Volume 4, number 61 to 64. Number 5. Super Doom. After a trip to Tibet, Clark, Lois Lane, and Jimmy Olsen built a machine that used vibrations to bring thoughts into reality, and the best possible use for it in their eyes was to create a Superman that was a thought-powered redeemer capable of saving the world. Unfortunately, they ended up having to sell the machine to Overcorp, and Overcorp took their Superman idea and twisted it so much that the brutal and toxic Super Doom was born. A self-described killer franchise, Super Doom wasted no time in becoming the preeminent superhuman of its world, and sought out to eliminate any form of competition, meaning he was on the hunt for other Supermen. After ravaging countless parallel planets and butchering numerous Superman and Superman-like adjacent people, it finally tracked down its creators to Earth 23, where it killed Jimmy and mortally wounded Clark. Later, Super Doom was summoned to Prime Earth by an unwilling Lex Luthor as a final doomsday weapon against Superman, and after a brutal struggle, Superman overcame the monster, which, upon defeat, transformed into a bomb that Superman managed to place on the dark side of the moon before detonation, seemingly annihilating Super Doom once and for all. Give the story a read for yourself, starting with 2012's Action Comics Volume 2, number 9. Number 4. Superman Earth 1198. In Superman the Dark Side, the baby Kal-El ship is diverted on its path to Earth and instead lands on the planet Apocalypse, home of the Overlord Darkseid. In this version of Superman, Darkseid is the one to raise him, and Superman becomes his loyal and devoted disciple and helps him in the destruction of New Genesis. As well as this, Superman doesn't grow up to wear tights and a cape. Instead, he opts for a menacing black and red armor with a lightning bolt S across his chest. Not only is this Superman powerful, evil, and terrifying, he also has a thing for weapons, using the Apocalypse Apocalypsean sword, and Omega Warhead, as well as anything he can get his hands on. Superman in this story is more of a pawn for Darkseid than inherently evil, but much like the others, his actions have horrific consequences. With his direct and indirect help, Darkseid managed to extract the anti-life equation from Superman's cells and subjugated the world and expanded his reach. With Earth by his side and a yellow sun to power him up, Superman was forced to fight Darkseid to end his reign of terror. Highly recommend you check out this 3-issue run for yourself, starting with 1998 Superman Darkseid #1. Number 3, Cyborg Superman. Now there have been 2 major characters that have become Cyborg Superman. The first and most famous is the astronaut Hank Henshaw. When a solar flare hit Henshaw's spacecraft during a space experiment, he and his crew started to mutate. The mutation was so strong that once back on Earth, Henshaw's crew, along with his wife, all committed suicide. Before Henshaw's body disintegrates from the solar flare, he is able to upload his mind using NASA equipment. With the help of the birthing matrix that was used to send Superman to Earth, Henshaw creates a cyborg body with all the powers that Superman has. After this, Henshaw finds out that Superman had thrown the Eradicator into the sun, which caused the original solar flare. Blaming Superman for everything, the newly formed Cyborg Superman seeks revenge on the Man of Steel. To destroy the real Superman's reputation, Cyborg Superman tried to use a nuclear bomb to destroy Metropolis. He was defeated because that's what happens when you go up against Superman, but used his powers to inhabit machines to return over and over and over again, once even conquering most of the planet Apocalypse. After his ultimate defeat, he was taken in by Sinestro during the Sinestro Corps War, making him even more powerful than ever. Since the New 52 era, Cyborg Superman has been revamped as having been the father of Supergirl, Zor-El, who survived Krypton's destruction only to have been transformed into the villain he is today. Why not give Hank's story a read for yourself, starting with 1990's Adventures of Superman number 466. Number 2, Lord Superman. This alternate Superman doesn't have any roots with comics. He is actually from the Justice League TV series, specifically 2003's episode A Better World, and is one of the first Dark Superman that we've seen in the animated universe. This Superman lost his way in battle with President Lex Luthor after Luthor executed the Flash in front of him, and mocked the Man of Steel for never being able to see things through to their logical conclusion. Superman, overcome with rage, executed Luthor with his heat vision, took over the world with his Justice League's help, and formed the Justice Lord's crime-free regiment. They saw themselves as the world's saviors, and the Terror was a small price to pay to realize their vision. Of course, when they found an alternate Earth, they immediately imagined all the quote-unquote good they could have done there, and Lord Superman's incredible powers would have let him succeed on this new Earth if it weren't for the regular Superman, who managed to defeat the Justice Lord before it was too late. I think the worst thing about Justice Lord Superman is that he truly thought he was doing the right thing, but we all know for a fact that he wasn't. Check out this 2-part episode for yourself and let me know what you think in the comments below. And finally, number 1, Injustice Superman. Before I dive more into this one, I have to say that I love the Injustice games so much. I remember when I first got the game and I did not put it down until I was finished with the story, so comment below who your go-to character is. In Injustice 1, I'd have to say mine is either Nightwing or Batman, but in Injustice 2, it has to be Green Arrow or Scarecrow. Anyways, sorry about that, let's talk about Injustice Superman. In a storyline amalgamated from diverse comic plots along with the Justice League animated 2-parter, A Better World, that I just talked about, the Joker sadistically fear gasses Superman into killing Lois Lane. Superman responds by putting his open hand straight through the clown's chest and turns the world into a dictatorship-like police state. In the process, he doxes Batman, murders Shazam and Martian Manhunter, converts the Justice League into his personal secret police, and gets his butt kicked by Alfred Pennyworth. He's finally defeated by a still good Superman from another universe who encases him in a red sunlight-generating capsule. Now, there have been a few storylines over the years that have revolved around the idea of what would happen if Superman went bad, and whether anyone could stop him, and this just proves that the only man who can take down Superman is Superman himself. Why not play the games again for yourself to refresh your memory, or check out 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us #1. Number 10, Speed Demon. Coming to us from the Amalgam Universe, a parallel universe that is composed of mashups of some of our favorite Marvel and DC characters that was unfortunately destroyed thanks to the cross-multiviral conflict, comes Blaze Allen, a combination of Barry Allen and Johnny Blaze. Once a stunt rider working at a carnival, Blaze Allen becomes the Speed Demon following the death of his wife at the hands of the evil Night Spectre. He was convinced by Merlin to bond with the demon known as Etrigan, and from there, the entity known as Speed Demon was born. Granted the abilities of Ghost Rider, including his fiery powers as well as super strength, Speed Demon is not actually all that fast despite his name and lineage. While the character is a formidable fighter and an all-around powerful being, he falls very short in the speed department, especially compared to all the other speedsters. There have been other characters that have taken up this mantle, including both Jay Garrick and Wallace West, however all of their abilities seem to be similar to the originals. Check out Blaze Allen for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1996's Speed Demon #1. Number 9, Deceased Flash. Now a member of the anti-living, Barry Allen, formerly known as the hero The Flash, is exactly what you think he is, a zombified speedster. When the anti-life equation begins spreading worldwide, Barry went into hiding alongside Kid Flash, until they were found by Superman and Green Lantern. Leaving Wally in their more than capable hands, the Flash sped off to the Daily Planet where he encountered an infected Giganta. Thankfully though, she was taken down with a blast to the head from Cyborg. Soon after, we see the Fortress of Solitude turned into a shelter for the uninfected heroes. However, an infected Martian Manhunter was able to make it through, and not only did he kill Lex Luthor by just ripping him in half, he infected the Flash with a scratch to the back as well. Barry immediately ran out of the fortress because he didn't want to hurt or infect anyone else, and it didn't take long for him to become fully infected, and he started attacking the remaining survivors all across the world. He was finally stopped by Superman after the two collided into each other at full force, killing the speedster right then and there, but not before he was able to infect the Man of Steel. Give this storyline a read for yourself, starting with 2019's Deceased, number 1. Number 8, Barry Allen Out of Time. Hailing from a possible future, this iteration of the Flash is a much darker Barry Allen from 20 years in the future. This future Flash first appears in the Flash Annual Volume 4 number 3 as a broken man. Reeling from the death of a close friend and fellow speedster Wally West, Future Flash travels backwards through time on a crusade to murder all the former enemies he deems responsible for West's death, hoping to somehow change the future. His actions only widen a tear in the Speed Force, however, and the once hero ultimately decides to use a present-day Barry Allen's energy to seal the rift, proving his superiority in a one-on-one battle against himself. Because apparently the Flash is like a fine wine and only betters with age, the pair are soon interrupted by the arrival of Wally West. Able to take on both speedsters at once, Future Flash's actions caused the one thing he began his quest to stop: the death of Wally West. Give the storyline a read for yourself, starting with the Flash Annual Volume 4 number 3, and let me know what you think of it in the comments below. Number 7, The Rival. Real name Edward Clare, The Rival is the arch-enemy of the Golden Age Flash, Jay Garrick, and is one of the oldest speedsters around. Clarence was a professor at the university Jay Garrick went to and believed that he had the know-how and means to recreate the speed formula that gave Jay Garrick his powers in the first place. He was able to develop a drug derivative of the same formula called Velocity 9, and after taking it himself he gained the powers a speedster would have. However, he found out that they were only temporary. He became the criminal that he is because his findings were rejected by his fellow science peers, and decided then to don a darker version of Jay Garrick's costume and commit crimes under the name The Rival. After losing to the Flash the first time, the Rival resurfaced a couple months later, and during his battle with the Flash, he was somehow able to reach light speed and just vanished and was stuck traveling through the Speed Force until he was pulled out by Johnny Sorrow. Check him out for yourself in his first appearance in 1949's Flash Comics number 104. Number 6, Dark Flash. Walter West is essentially an identical version of Wally West, just from another timeline, with their two histories mirroring each other's up until one certain point. Walter's version of Linda Park, the girlfriend/wife of Wally, is killed during a battle with Cobra. Turning him into a very bitter speedster and eventually the Dark Flash, Walter develops an authoritarian zero-tolerance policy for criminals, going so far as to cruelly maim them if they denied his actions and got in his way. Eventually, Walter learned that the love of his life was still alive and well in another timeline, and he set out to defeat Wally West and completely replace him. Able to easily take on his alternate timeline counterpart, Wally, who is often considered the fastest character to take up the Flash mantle, which further extends the parallel between the two. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1999's Chain Lightning finale, Finish Line. Number 5, Johnny Quick. A member of the Crime Syndicate of America, an evil version of the Justice League hailing from Earth 3, Jonathan Allen is Johnny Quick, the Flash of this universe. After conquering the entirety of Earth 3, the Crime Syndicate of America decided to abandon their Earth to terrorize and take over Earth 1 and 2. It took the combined efforts of the Justice League and the Justice Society of America to stop them, although unfortunately for everyone that wasn't the end of their reign of terror. Now, Johnny was initially depicted as being slower than the Flash, however he figured out a way to make up for his shortcomings by developing a helmet that vastly increased his top speed while also deepening his relationship with the Speed Force, making Johnny Quick more than a match for the Flash. Since then, Johnny has shown tremendous command over the Speed Force, defeating countless superheroes in a matter of microseconds in the Forever Evil storyline. It was only after Alexander Luthor, aka Mazza, stole his power that he met his end. Check him out for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 1964's Justice League of America number 29, or feel free to skip ahead to his newer iteration starting with 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23. Number 4, The Red Death. Once the hero of Gotham, Bruce Wayne from Earth -52 was forced to seek more extreme approaches to prevent crime after losing all of his Robins. Coming to the conclusion that he wasn't quite fast enough to fight crime, Bruce set his eyes on the Flash, deeming himself more worthy of the Speed Force than Barry Allen, which is pretty presumptuous, but okay, whatever floats your boat. After defeating Barry, Bruce strapped him to the front of the Batmobile and drove them both into the Speed Force using the power of the Batmobile combined with the Cosmic Treadmill. The two merged together and Batman became the Red Death, using his new powers to kill instead of just stopping crime, much to Barry's dismay as his consciousness was still very much alive in Bruce's head. Like all of the Dark Knights of the multiverse, the Red Death represents one of Batman's fears, this one being losing members of the Bat family and his love for them and regret for those he failed. His dialogue and his Speed Force infection also imply he might represent Batman's fear of old age slowing him down as well. Check him out in his first appearance in 2017's Dark Days, the casting, number 1. Number 3, Reverse Flash. No, we're not talking about Eobard Thawne, we're going to be looking at the second Reverse Flash, Daniel West. Daniel ran away from home at an early age because of his abusive and drunk father, and by the time he was 18, he had fallen into the wrong crowd and was a small-time thug. All he wanted more than anything was to mend his relationship with his sister Iris, but after his first attempt, he was thwarted by the Flash and sent to jail for 5 years. When he got out, he wanted nothing more than to kill his abusive father because he felt that was the only way he could make amends with his sister, and gained his Speed Force powers that allowed him to travel back in time after a monorail crashed, and from then on he called himself the Reverse Flash and killed anyone who had a connection to the Speed Force so that he could drain their power. It got to the point where the only two left with a connection to the Speed Force were the Flash and Iris West, and Daniel was able to go back in time to attempt to kill his father. However, it didn't really work out, because his younger self and Iris caught him in the act. He then realized the error of his ways and turned his powers over to the Flash, who set everything right once again. Check out this Reverse Flash for yourself, starting with his first appearance in 2012's The Flash, Volume 4, number 0. Number 2, Black Flash. They say death eventually catches us all, but what happens when you're too fast even for death itself? Well, that's where the Black Flash comes in. Easily one of the most mysterious entities in the DC universe, Black Flash is a symbol of death for speedsters across the multiverse, appearing just before the death of every significant speedster. Able to easily keep pace with the fastest beings in existence, it seems death really is impossible to outrun, even for speedsters. The Black Flash first made an appearance when Wally West seemingly cheated death by using his speedster powers to escape the inevitable. When the Black Flash realized he needed a human host to properly function, he chose Linda Park as his host. After Flash Rebirth brought back Barry Allen from the dead, he also noticed that the Speed Force was changing him, and it was revealed that the Reverse Flash's actions had mutilated the Speed Force and was turning Barry Allen, its avatar, into the Black Flash itself. The entity that could turn any speedster to just by touching him. The current host of the Black Flash mantle is Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash. Check out this Horseman of Death for yourself, starting with 1998's The Flash, Volume 2, number 138. Number 1, Godspeed. August Hart was the former detective partner of Barry Allen. August was the only witness to Barry's accident that turned him into the Flash, so while going after a criminal organization called the Black Hole, August was struck by lightning during a Speed Force storm in Central City. He became the Flash's quote-unquote partner, but in secret. August became the ruthless vigilante known as Godspeed, and got his revenge on who he suspected to be his brother's killer. Godspeed is basically what the Flash would be if Barry Allen had one bad day. The Flash refrains from using his lethal force, but Godspeed doesn't at all. Godspeed's argument is that Central City would have been a much safer place had the Flash shown some bloodlust. He proves this point when he kills Eobard Thawne, aka the Reverse Flash, who didn't have any speedster powers at the time. Thawne did get his revenge eventually though, because after Barry brings back Thawne via time travel, that Thawne kills August. Man, keeping up with that whole time travel and speedster thing is so tough. Either way, Godspeed is one of the most deadly and dangerous enemies the Flash has ever had to race against. Check them out for yourself, starting with 2016's The Flash Rebirth Volume 2, number 1. Number 10, the Super Enemies. Starting off our list today with a Dark Justice League with no comic origins comes the Super Enemies, an alternate universe version of the Super Friends devoted to the cause of deceit, injustice, and terror. The team consists of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Robin, Aquaman, Zan, Jaina, and Gleek. However, they have no morals and are just evil mirrored versions of the Super Friends. In the episode they're featured in, the Super Friends meet these evil duplicates in the Hall of Evil, which is their Hall of Justice. The Super Enemies frequently taunt the authorities, who are powerless to stop them, although the civilian police are actually equipped to just straight up take them down, as they have kryptonite lasers to stop evil Superman. The Superman of the Super Friends universe first met them when he was mysteriously transported into their universe while trying to stop a volcano from erupting, while their Superman was transported into the Super Friends universe. As Superman tried to escape from these Super Enemies and the military armed with kryptonite weapons, the evil Superman was transported to the real universe to fight the Super Friends. Superman Prime ended up getting an antimatter flask that switched them back, which was good news for everyone. And then later on, Lex Luthor organized his own Legion of Doom to be the real anti-Justice League, and it had a much much better name. Check out the one-off appearance of this evil team in 1979 Super Friends episode Universe of Evil. Number 9. Conglomerate. The Justice League doesn't always have to consist of the same roster. I mean, don't get me wrong, I am a huge Batman and Superman fan, but there is also a smaller and less powerful team called Justice League International, and Mark Waid and Rod Wiggum had them face their evil duplicates in 1992. In the previous story, Booster Gold had just left the JLI to found his own corporate-sponsored team called the Conglomerate. Now that didn't work out too well, and the owner decided to pull new heroes out of another reality to form a new conglomerate of Deadeye, who's an alternate Green Arrow, Fiero, an alternate Fire, Frostbite, aka Ice, Elastaman, aka Elongated Man, Element Man, aka Metamorpho, Scarab, an alternate Blue Beetle, and Slipstream, an alternate Flash. The conglomerate decided to challenge the JLI to a quote-unquote friendly competition that quickly turned violent when they realized the new conglomerate were all from Quard in evil antimatter world. The JLI managed to get them back into their own world, but it was a very, very close call to say the least. Check out the first appearance of the conglomerate in 1991's Justice League Quarterly number 1, or feel free to skip ahead to 1992's Justice League Quarterly number 8 for the fight of a lifetime. Number 8. Flashpoint. In an effort to stop his mother's murder, Barry Allen created the Flashpoint timeline, a significantly darker reflection of the main DC universe and one of my favorite DC storylines to date. In this timeline, Thomas Wayne becomes Batman after Bruce is killed instead of him, Wonder Woman is like a tyrannical ruler of the Amazons and is locked in a crazy war with Aquaman because she killed his wife, and Superman is nowhere to be found, which means the Justice League technically doesn't exist, and honestly, what's darker than that? Probably a decent amount because this is only number 8, but anyways. If you're not familiar with this timeline, then I highly recommend you check it out for yourself. It is such a good one. All I'll say is that by the end of the series, several major characters are dead, and then in the expanded universe of the Flashpoint timeline, even more characters are revealed to be dead. It's just nuts. Thankfully, Barry managed to fix things before it was too late, but that wasn't enough to erase the Flashpoint timeline completely. Because of that, the DC universe is still dealing with the events of Flashpoint even to this day. Give it a read for yourself, starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, Number 1. Number 7. The Crime Society. Hailing from Earth 3 comes the Crime Society of America, but not to be confused with the Crime Syndicate of America, who we may or may talk about later on. Consisting of Johnny Quick II, Owlman II, Power Ring, Superwoman, Ultraman, and a few others, this team of villains is basically just evil doppelgangers of the Justice League and the Justice Society. The Crime Society encountered and fought the Challengers, consisting of Donna Troy, Jason Todd, Kyle Rayner, and Bob the Monitor, and the Jokester. After the Challengers and the Jokester escaped to another universe, the Crime Society were offered a place among Monarch's transdimensional army, which they accepted, of course. The Crime Society went on to fight on Earth 51 and battled the Monitors. When Superboy Prime subsequently caused the destruction of Earth 51's reality, it's unknown if any of the Crime Society were able to actually survive that. Now, while we're waiting to hear their fate, why not check out their story for yourself, starting with 2007's 52, Number 52. Number 6. Kingdom Come Justice League. In 1996, Alex Ross and Mark Waid teamed up to create the miniseries Kingdom Come. This miniseries was set in a near future where the traditional heroes of the past came together to stop the brutal superheroes of the new generation. The new Justice League of elderly but still very strong heroes like Superman and Green Lantern set up a prison to hold rogue heroes and supervillains alike. Unfortunately, the Gulag erupted in a riot between metahumans that threatened to destroy the entire world, and that caused, let's just say, a little bit more trouble for these geriatric heroes. In an act of desperation, the United Nations launched several nuclear bombs over the Gulag site. Batman and Wonder Woman deactivated 2 of them, but one of them was still primed and falls over the battlefield. Superman attempts to stop the bomb, but Marvel throws him back and stops the bomb himself, detonating it prematurely over the Gulag, killing a lot of the League, Cavalry, and many of the inmates as well. What makes the storyline so dark is that throughout the story, the Justice League struggle to follow their own morals, even as they impose their own brand of justice on a very unhappy world. Batman in particular sided with Lex Luthor to quote-unquote liberate mankind from the Justice League. In the end, Superman saw his failure, but only at the cost of thousands of lives. Check out the entire miniseries for yourself, starting with 1996's Kingdom Come, Number 1. Number 5. The Justice Lords. What makes the Justice Lords darker than the other timelines mentioned so far is the fact that the Justice League actually managed to completely rid their world of crime. While an absence of crime would be a positive thing for most, it's actually alluded that this version of the Justice League went to pretty extreme measures in order to accomplish such a feat. Appearing in the Justice League animated series episode A Better World, Lex Luthor has become the President of the United States and decided to just execute the Flash. That didn't really sit well with the Flash's friends, which is why an enraged Superman confronted Luthor in the Oval Office. Realizing he would never reform Luthor and and keep him from committing such villainous acts, he incinerated him on the spot with his heat vision. With the president out of the way and a new method devised to deal with villains, the Justice League rechristened themselves the Justice Lords and went about establishing a new world order under their quote-unquote protection. They eventually came into conflict with the Justice League when they tried to instill their totalitarian rule on the other DC universes, but thankfully they were finally stopped by Superman and his pals, which actually included Lex Luthor, who became instrumental in stopping the Justice Lords and stripping them of their power. Check out this episode for yourself in 2003's Justice League Season 2, episode 22 and 23 as well. Number 4, the Injustice League. Back in 1988, we got introduced to a new version of the Justice League known as the Injustice League. This ragtag group consisted entirely of criminals who never actually made it big in their various enterprises, and determined to make it big, they just banded together and became the rather ineffective Injustice League. Major Disaster, Big Stir, Clue Master, Multi-Man, Clock King, and the Mighty Bruce are what made up the roster. They barely managed to pull off any capers and mostly just got their butts kicked. Oddly enough though, after 2000's Silver Age, the Showcase number 1 came out, it retroactively made 1989's Injustice League the second version of the team. The quote-unquote original team was brought together in the Silver Age by the evil intergalactic Agamemnon, who used Lex Luthor to recruit other villains like Black Manta, Bizarro, and the Joker. This Injustice League was way more effective and even managed to switch minds with the JLA on one occasion. When the Justice League managed to switch back, they erased the memory of the event from the villains' minds completely. Check out these two teams in 1989's Justice League International number 23, or head over to 2000's Silver Age Showcase number 1. Number 3, Injustice Justice League. Now I think everyone can agree that no other timeline has featured more DC character deaths than the Injustice timeline. After the Joker takes virtually everything from Superman, the Man of Steel finally cracks and just kills the Clown Prince of Crime. From there, heroes continue to devolve into their worst selves, with a fair split maintaining their moral codes and principles. In the video game and comic franchise Injustice Gods Among Us, the Justice League still calls themselves by that same name, eventually changing it to the Regime though. But that's about the only similarity between the two universes, because the Injustice universe is about as dark as it can get. Superman loses his cool and just thrusts his hand through the clown's chest after the Joker destroys Metropolis, killing Lois Lane. As you might imagine, this not only kills the Joker but surprises Batman and everyone else around him. Superman decides he is fed up with the old way of doing things and sets out to create a new world order under his totalitarian rule. Superman reforms the League after opposing Batman and many of his other former friends. In the end, it's actually the Dark Knight who succeeds in recruiting Superman from the regular DC universe, who comes in to defeat his darker alter self. Now if you're not familiar with this storyline, check it out for yourself, starting with 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us number 1, or honestly just head back and play through the games one more time. Number 2, the New Reichman. Ever wonder what would happen if Superman didn't crash land in Kansas and instead he crash landed in, I don't know, Germany? Well, wonder no longer, because on Earth 10 that is the reality. On Earth 10, the Germans used Superman, known as Overman in this universe, to win World War II and basically take over the world. As a champion of Germania and the leader of the New Reichman, Overman is accompanied by Brunhilde, Earth 10's Wonder Woman, Leatherwing aka Batman, Blitzen aka The Flash, The Martian, Martian Manhunter, Underwater Man aka Aquaman, and Overgirl aka Supergirl, who was unfortunately killed in battle. Alongside the German forces, Overman conquered the world in less than 20 years, after which he decided to leave the Earth for a while. 3 years later, he returned with a clear head and saw all of the damage he helped cause and became an advocate against all that he once stood for, well, still working alongside them for some reason. Eventually, German scientists used callus cells to create a clone of him known as Overgirl that Overman loved like family. However, she died not too long after her creation, and this hit him hard. Inconsolable and grief-stricken, Overman leaked some precious information to the freedom fighters that resulted in the demise of the New Reichman and Metropolis as well. Check out probably one of the saddest Superman stories I have ever heard, starting with 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, number 1. And number 1, the Crime Syndicate of America. Consisting of Ultraman, Owlman, Superwoman, Johnny Quick, and the Power Ring, the Crime Syndicate of America is the first alternate version of the Justice League to ever come to life following the events of Crisis on Infinite Earths. That event erased the multiverse but left the Antimatter universe, also known as the Quardian universe within DC's continuity. Within the Antimatter universe, the Crime Syndicate existed as an evil version of our favorite superheroes, only they were far more dastardly than their previous versions. With virtually no one to oppose them, they managed to establish and maintain control over a large portion of their Earth. Eventually they grew bored of their Earth and the crime syndicate began kidnapping people from the 52 multiverse matter-based worlds and were visited by our Justice League to retrieve the people from the Justice League Earth that have been kidnapped. Fast forward past some pretty sweet fights and we see Owlman along with Superwoman and Ultraman banished to a prison subdimension while Johnny Quick and the current Power Ring were captured. Highly recommend you check out the storyline for yourself, so check it all out in their first appearance in 2000's JLA Earth number 2. Number 10. Wonder Woman Dark Knight's Death Metal. Now, although this is technically in the main continuity, the Wonder Woman that appears in Dark Knight's Death Metal absolutely deserves a spot on this list today because she is one serious badass. Introduced to us in the first issue of Dark Knight's Death Metal, Wonder Woman alongside Swamp Thing is a guard of the demonic-looking prison that holds any villain that does not want to team up with the Batman Who Laughs. So it would kind of seem like she's working for him, but it's revealed later that is not the case when she just impales and rips the Batman Who Laughs in two with her new awesome-looking weapon, the Chainsaw of Truth. Wonder Woman's whole goal in this storyline is to correct the mistakes that have been made and to set everything back on track by somehow resetting the timeline. Basically, she's the Wonder Woman we all know and love, stuck in one of the darkest and scariest DC storylines to date, and that is why she is starting off our list today. Check her out for yourself, starting with 2020's Dark Knight's Death Metal, Volume 1, Number 1. Number 9, Bizarra. You can probably guess it from the name, but Bizarra is the Bizarro version of Wonder Woman. Now, if you're not familiar with Bizarro, he is basically an incomplete clone of Superman, which means that Bizarra is an incomplete clone of Wonder Woman. She was created using the powers of the 5th dimension and is meant to be the evil counterpart to our Wonder Woman, but I think we all know that Bizarro versions of any hero never really get the job done. Even though Bizarra possesses both the bracelets of submission and the lasso of truth like her counterpart, she's only strong enough to challenge Wonder Woman in a one-on-one duel, and when it comes to brains, oh man, trust me, she does not even come close to Wonder Woman. As a member of the Injustice League of Un-America, Bizarro was one of the many that was captured by Metalo in his attempt to rule over Bizarro World, but was thankfully freed by Bizarro himself. Now, I think my favorite thing about Bizarra and the other Bizarro copies is their way of speaking. She spoke in a very twisted tongue and always meant the opposite of what she said. For example, when she says, "I love you," she actually means, "I hate you." Check her out for yourself in 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, Number 1. Number 8, Brunhilde. Hailing from Earth 10, a universe where many of our favorite heroes have been turned into villainous versions of themselves, comes Valkyrie Brunhilde, the Wonder Woman of this Earth that is based on Norse mythology, as opposed to, the original Greek. On Earth 10, all these superheroes we're familiar with are part of the German army and are believers of fascism, so from that you can probably assume that most of them are pure evil. Brunhilde is a member of the New Reichman alongside other dark iterations of the Justice League members, whose only real goal is to rid the world of the freedom fighters and spread their ideals across the land. The New Reichman are, however, taken down pretty much from the inside after Overman began to feel guilty about his past deeds. Honestly, put simply, Brunhilde is an evil version of Wonder Woman that can and will go to any lengths necessary to get the job done. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with her first appearance in 2015's The Multiversity Guidebook, Number 1. Number 7, Deceased Wonder Woman. Taking place in the Deceased DC universe, Deceased is a miniseries that follows the aftermath of Cyborg's body being used to carry a version of the anti-life equation that ended up turning the general population into zombies. In this miniseries, we see Wonder Woman become a member of the Unliving, which is basically DC's equivalent of zombies, whose whole purpose is to spread anti-life by either infecting or killing living things. They show very little signs of intelligence, and they still retain the ability to utilize their skill sets, powers, and technologies respectively to a surprisingly effective manner. The Infected have also shown numerous times of coming up with very elaborate strategies and tactical decisions to bypass pockets of resistance and cause as much death and destruction as possible. Our Infected Wonder Woman actually showed that she was able to form coherent and full sentences when she was interrogated by Cyborg, implying that she still has some humanity left in her. However, after being set free, she immediately decapitated Cyborg to preserve any secrets she told him. Honestly, all I have to say is Wonder Woman's strength and skills combined with the mind and body of a zombie makes for a scary hero. So check her out for yourself, starting with 2019's Deceased, Number 1. Number 6, Whom God Destroys Wonder Woman. This version of Wonder Woman only showed up in a 4-issue series called Superman and Wonder Woman, Who Gods Destroy. This storyline takes place in an alternate world where Europe is still under the control of the Germans, and Lois Lane actually steps up to the plate as the new Wonder Woman in order to protect those around her from the tyrannical ruling of the original Wonder Woman and Superman. Not a whole lot is known about this evil Wonder Woman other than the fact that she betrayed her home in order to obtain more power. And just like the other evil versions of her, her lack of humanity is incredibly evident as she looks down on Lois Lane's Wonder Woman for just being immortal. The story ends with Lois defeating the evil Wonder Woman, and it is revealed that the gods Zeus and Hera were actually playing a game of chess using the world as their chess pieces. and that's why everything is so messed up. Oddly enough though, the story doesn't quite end there, because once everyone is defeated, everything seems to be pretty much back to normal. Superman, Lois, and Wonder Woman all decide to live together on Superman's fortress on the moon. Check out this miniseries for yourself, starting with 1997 Superman and Wonder Woman, Whom Gods Destroy, number 1. Number 5, Frank Miller's Wonder Woman. Hopefully we all know who Frank Miller is, you know, the writer of The Dark Knight Returns and Daredevil Born Again. Well, Miller also took a crack at the character that is Wonder Woman in his Batman series The Dark Knight Strikes Back. In this series, heroes like Superman, Wonder Woman, and Captain Marvel have been forced to work for the government, since their loved ones are being held hostage and are under threat. Superman is even ordered by the president, who turns out to be a computer-generated front for Lex Luthor and Brainiac, to stop Batman. It eventually gets to the point in the story where Superman, Wonder Woman, and their daughter Lara joins forces with Batman once again because they deem his plan to be the only way to get out of this whole mess. Now I'll be honest, this Wonder Woman isn't on this list today because of how dark the story is. It's mostly because this is considered to be one of the worst incarnations of Wonder Woman to date. Now she's definitely the warrior you expect from Wonder Woman, but her cold and quite frankly sexist portrayal in the comics was nothing short of distasteful. It also doesn't help that her humanity was put in question throughout the entirety of the graphic novel. If you feel like you can stomach it, check out this Wonder Woman and this whole series, starting with 2002's The Dark Knight Strikes Again, number 1. Number 4, Wonder Woman God of War. Following 2011's Flashpoint event, DC rebooted the entirety of its continuity into the New 52. In the new Wonder Woman, the story of Hippolyta creating Diana from clay is revealed to actually be a lie, and Diana is actually a child of Zeus, and the whole clay bit was a cover story intended to keep Zeus's jealous wife Hera from killing her. Sometime later during her training, Diana became the secret protege of Ares, the god of war, only to have him drop her when she refused to kill for him. Years later, after Diana learned her true origin, she found herself embroiled in the power struggles of her Olympian kin. In the course of one adventure, she had to kill Ares, which made her the new god of war, and although she fought against the role for a while, as the battle against the monstrous firstborn of Zeus heated up, she stepped right into the job. Honestly, who knows what Wonder Woman creator William Marston would have made of this, given that he wrote her as this force of peace and this nemesis of the god of war. He might be happier with the events in DC Rebirth, which implies that the whole, Diana's New 52 adventures didn't actually happen. Number 3, Superwoman. I feel like we all knew this alternate Wonder Woman was going to end up on this list today. Hailing from Earth 3, the Earth that is said to be the birthplace of evil, Superwoman is a renegade Amazon who is also taking on the identity of Lois Lane, depending on the version that we're talking about here. Depending on her origin, she is either from Paradise Island or its antimatter equivalent known as Damnation Island. While there are many versions of her out there, one thing that they all have in common is her sadistic personality and the love triangle she has with her colleagues. Equipped with a lasso of submission, a barbed and much scarier looking version of the lasso of truth that forces the captor to not only comply with the user, but also fall in love with them, which she has used a few times to her advantage, if you know what I mean. As a member of the crime syndicate, she helped imprison most of the members of the various Justice Leagues in the Firestorm Matrix and began a reign of terror over the world, eliminating any resistance in their way. Give her story a read for yourself, starting with 1964's Justice League of America number 29, or skip ahead to 2013's Justice League Volume 2, number 23. Number 2, Injustice Wonder Woman. Easily one of the most dark and evil versions of Wonder Woman out there. Not only did she see Superman's descent into evil before it ever happened, but she also actively encouraged it, practically manipulating the Man of Steel when he was at his worst for her own personal gain. Not only that, but by the events of the original Injustice video game, she had been ruling Paradise Island with an iron fist and showed absolutely no remorse. She served as Superman's right hand and took the place of Lois Lane as his new love interest. However, he clearly showed no love towards her because he was still mourning the loss of his dead wife, who he killed himself. When she is confronted by her mainstream counterpart, the mainstream Wonder Woman reprimands her for blindly following a man who does not feel as much devotion to her as she does to him. And once Wonder Woman is defeated, she is taken by her fellow Amazons to be imprisoned for her role in the regime and is later seen on Kahndaq during the events of Injustice 2 as she has been exiled. Take a look at her story for yourself, starting with 2013's Injustice Gods Among Us number 1, or honestly just feel free to replay the games. And finally, number 1, Flashpoint Wonder Woman. When the Flash accidentally created Flashpoint as a result of attempting to save his mother, the ripple effects changed the timeline to the worst it's ever been. Batman is Thomas Wayne, Superman is in a government facility, and Wonder Woman is the monarch of the Amazons and currently at war with Atlantis, all because she killed Aquaman's wife, who knew Wonder Woman was having an affair with her husband. With all of the normal powers and accessories that make Wonder Woman a formidable foe, this iteration of Wonder Woman seems to lack the empathy that prevents Diana from absolutely losing it and killing everyone. As the war went on, Aquaman and Wonder Woman forged an alliance to take down a mutual enemy, Batman. As both monarchs send their troops to Batman's lair, the world is erased, killing every single inhabitant. Absolutely cruel and bloodthirsty, this Wonder Woman has something that she shares with her Injustice counterpart: her lack of love and above all, her sickening lack of humanity. Now I love the Flashpoint timeline with all of my heart, so why not check it and her out for yourself, starting with 2011's Flashpoint Volume 2, Number 1.